The five levels of dreams. Sit back, relax, and let's fucking go.
Dreaming is ridiculous. For reference, we know more about the abyss that is the Marianas Trench than we do about the mental landscapes of your dreams. We know more about the tiny remnants of DNA extinct creatures have left behind than we do about your nightly hallucinations. Heck,
Bro, and like why are some like of all the hallucinations you can have, why in the fucking world do our brains have to take like just the stupidest shit we've seen as a child and just absolutely like grandiose horror, just anything you can imagine. Like fucking it's insane. Like I don't even know where this image is from. I could probably figure it out, but it's like I see this and the first thing I think of is Humpty Dumpty. And I'm like, why the fuck would 5-year-old me who's seen Humpty Dumpty go to sleep and wake up with a sleep paralysis demon and I'm just in my bed fucking and I just see some Jabba the Hutt looking. I lost the plot, but you get the plot. Like, why do I just don't get it? I don't get it.
we even know more about Martian dust storms than we do about our little bedtime stories. And yet, everyone dreams. They're the most private thing that all of us have in common. Immediately recognizable, but incredibly difficult to define. So much so that for decades, dreams were believed to be nothing more than brain noise, very fleeting and completely meaningless. But if that's true, why would your brain paralyze you during REM sleep? Why would it burn costly energy running simulations instead of repairing itself? And why would REM sleep appear in the womb way before?
Yeah, like I was gonna say, there's no way it's completely meaningless. Like that would be absolutely wild. Like obviously, the amount of exploration we have into like the human psyche is really low, but that would just be wild if it was completely pointless. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like all of the dreams we have meaning, you know? Like a dream of me just sitting there with my cock out in the middle of my living room. Like it's just that doesn't have meaning. I mean, unless it does, and I'm just not forehead enough to understand it. But I just obviously they don't all have meanings or purpose, but like I feel like if I sit there and I have a dream about like a specific sequence of event, like that's got to have some kind of meaning. There's no way that doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. I don't know. I don't know where this is a study. I think somewhere that goes into like what the different, and she might talk about it. There's like a different psychological factor behind each dream and like why, like what each dream means. Like, oh, this means you're losing control of something. This means you're regretful. Also, let's full screen. But yeah, it's like I don't know. There's got to be something to do with that for sure. There's no way it's completely
Any life
meaningless.
experience? The reality is, the rabbit hole of dreams is deep, way deeper than you think. And from personal Reddit threads claiming to see the same stranger in
That's like really uncanny valley. I think. I don't know. I mean, it could just be because the drawing's not perfect and it's from like memory, but that is the most androgynous looking person I've ever seen in my life.
every dream for over a decade, to entire scientific databases containing tens of thousands of peer-reviewed dream reports, completely different people find themselves in the exact same places with the exact same sequence of events, sometimes even while being awake. So what exactly is going on here? And
Speaking of
how deep
uncanny
into
valley,
dreams do we have to go to find out? Well, as it turns out,
fuck mannequins.
dreams have levels, and they get far stranger, go far deeper, and are far more consequential than we could have ever possibly imagined. The 5 levels of dreams aren't random. They build on one another through a sequence. But before that sequence even begins, there are 2 primary states of consciousness that everyone will experience: being awake
It's fucking
and being asleep.
wired.
However, what's less well known is that there's also a third state, a strange in-between called hypnagogia, which is a transitional state between being awake and falling asleep, or vice versa.
Yeah, I know that shit pretty well when I'm fucking driving home from work, half knocked, and I'm just on the fucking side of the curb, bro. I was coming home and I was so exhausted. I almost took out like my neighborhood has these like pillar lights with like the real bulbous lights on the top, and I was coming home. It had to have been like 2 o'clock. I was just I was exhausted because I didn't get any sleep the night before. So I'd been up like 30 something hours. I'm coming home and I managed to make it all the way like the 15-20 mile drive back, and I almost fucking crashed in my neighborhood. Uh, It was bad, man. I think I came like an inch or two within the fucking light.
What's interesting is that even though you're not fully asleep, raw fragmented noise still floods the brain, specifically geometric patterns. And yes, I mean these geometric patterns, which in level 1 is the pulsating chaos you'll experience as you drift into sleep. It was Heinrich Clover in the 1920s who first documented this phenomenon, and he found that there were 4 common patterns anytime someone begins entering an altered state. Lattices, cobwebs, tunnels, and spirals, all of which are described as the precursors to our inner worlds. We're not entirely sure why this happens, but we do know it comes from the visual cortex, which is one of the theories behind why we dream in general. Because of neuroplasticity, if the visual cortex is unused, like in people who are blind, neighboring brain regions essentially invade that space to then repurpose it for what they do. So it's thought that we dream as a defense mechanism, to keep the visual cortex active and protect its territory while we sleep. But while this may very well be why we started dreaming in the first place, it doesn't explain the content of dreams, or why so many brain areas other than the visual cortex need to be involved. Still, these geometric patterns are the doorway to dreams. They're all that exists in level 1. Some people remember experiencing them, and some people don't. But it is only once you cross through them that the real dreaming begins. In level 2, you're dreaming. Kind of. You're somewhere, you might be someone, but the dream is still forming. So at this level, the landscape is the focus. But it's odd, feels incomplete, and is completely empty. Which is why this level is where the concept of dreamscape comes from. An art style defined by surrealism, usually characterized by familiar landscapes and bright colors. But while most people focus on the everyday environments, the houses that look familiar, or the proportions that make
that looks like right out of the Truman Show. No, but that's true. Like a lot of the times, and I'll find myself like when I go to lay down, I'll try to go back to certain dreams that I've had before. I don't know if you've ever. I'm sure you've tried that. Like it's so hard. I've managed to do it like once or twice, but not quite like lucid dreaming, or like I control what's happening in the dream. It's just I focus so hard on emulating, almost daydreaming, the dream I had. And it's weird that I can remember. There's like, dreams I've had where like I go in a fucking rain gutter, and then like I walk through a gate and suddenly I'm in a rainy fucking town in a different world. Like, it's like that's like the ones that comes back to me. It's from years ago. And it's funny because like I remember the specific like drain or rain gutter that it was just some random one near a bus stop that I had when I was a kid. It's just the weirdest shit, and it's like that's when I have to think like, is there a meaning? Like, oh, I'm stepping into another world because I am terrified of where I am at. Like I don't know. I don't know. It's weird.
Make things feel off. What I find most interesting is the things that are missing. Now, I'm no artist, but I am familiar with the concept of negative spaces, which is when the absence of something outlines the main subject of the image by contrast. It works by creating a visual hierarchy that guides the viewer's eyes through the composition. But where it really shines is in its contribution to the harmony of the art piece. Negative spaces are used to distribute visual weight evenly. However, artists can take advantage of this by using too little or too much. Use too little and you can alter the viewer's perception by creating the feeling of being overwhelmed. Use too much and you can create a feeling of isolation or emptiness.
Like that.
In Dreamscape, aside from the fact that familiar objects are often conveyed, images feel familiar because the large negative space gives you the room needed to project your own feelings onto that artwork. And in this level of dreams, that's exactly what's happening. Dream researchers describe it as the void behind perception. Anthony Revonchow calls it selective simulation. Dream dictionaries call it the archetypal emblem of the void. Either way, this is when your brain starts to build. And oh boy does it do that, with the most vivid, accessible material it has at its disposal: memories. But not just any memories, heavy ones tagged with emotion, which come from the amygdala instead of the hippocampus. But at this point, what's supposed to be a dream is a void, unrendered and empty. And yet, it is that emptiness that allows the brain to project its emotions onto that void, creating a simple, barely rendered landscape of emotion.
So is that why they say, like, is that the theory behind why, like, your dreams quote unquote have meaning, right? Because it's like, if it comes from the amygdala instead of the hippocampus and it's like a void, it's empty of everything, right? Then all of those other emotions and feelings come spreading in, and your body, which is so interesting, your brain, I would assume the visual, the neuro, the not the neocortex, I forget what it was that he said earlier, but the whatever specific point of the brain that is responsible for visual stimulation and like projection tries to like make imagery, I guess, out of those feelings. So I guess that's why they say, like, oh, regret will show itself in some way, or fear will show itself, or sadness, or happiness, or being content. I think that's really interesting. I think, that also is like, where does that tie into the selectiveness behind like sleep paralysis and things that your brain thinks it sees in the dark? Like, it's insane to me, like, how quickly your body will take notice of something that is just slightly off, and if it's off enough in a way that it is completely illogical for an object like that to be there, your brain immediately jumps to the worst case scenario. Like my wife has cello, and when I'll see it, I could look away, look back, look away, look back, look away, look back 3 fucking times. Every single time I do, if I forget for just a split second that it is a cello case, it has like that slept person look in the darkness on it, like behind a table in the corner of the room, and my brain immediately just goes, what the fuck? And then I get tense, and then I calm down, and then I'll literally go like again, and it just repeats over and over and over and over.
Pure emotion in its most primal, raw, and chaotic form, stitched together from the deepest parts of your memories, with no plot, no structure, and no people, bubbling up to the surface as the foundation that every other level will be built upon. However, at this stage, what you experience is just the beginning. A strange phenomenon that exemplifies what Level 3 is about is the airport dream, which has hundreds of posts dedicated to it on our dreams. In them, people report finding themselves in an airport, scrambling to catch a flight. But as they make their way towards the flight gate, things start to go terribly wrong. At first, the gate will move or disappear. In response, the dreamer changes course. But as they do, they get lost. So in a desperate attempt at reaching their flight on time, they try to ask people for help, but get ignored. Or worse, turn to find them sometime, they try to ask people for help, but get ignored. Or worse, turn to find themselves as the only person in a massive airport. And no matter how much they run or how hard they try, eventually,
as peaceful as the sky should be, it's fucking awful.
By itself, this isn't a particularly unsettling dream. It's not comfortable, obviously, but I wouldn't call it a nightmare. However, where things do start to get...
Do you think that the reason why that is that way, like that level of like serenity should be calming, but it's not, is because that level of brightness and darkness, like just as the sun goes down, and it's just after sunset but not quite dark, is the point where there's still enough light to where you can see everything. It's not like dark enough to where there's certain things you just can't see, so your brain just goes whatever, right? It's still bright enough where you can technically see things, but now it's becoming fuzzy. Like, you can't make everything out, but you can see everything. So it's an overload sensation of, I can see everything, but can't make any of it out, versus when it's just dark, there's some things that you just can't see at all, so your brain goes, I don't need to worry about them. It's gotta be what it is.
The nightmarish is when they repeat. And in the airport dream, This seems to be a frequent occurrence, as a couple months later, the same person will find themselves in the same narrative arc but happening on a cruise, or in a hotel, or when they're on vacation,
That's an awful hotel.
all of which have the same outcome but with a different sequence of events. Generally, it's thought that a dream about never arriving in a transportation setting is tied to anxiety about unresolved life tasks, but with the setting itself depending on the transportation settings you're most accustomed to. Regardless, this phenomenon perfectly encapsulates the key aspect of this level. It's metaphorical. With raw emotion taking center stage, your brain is now trying to shape it. But to do that, it needs to turn up the volume, amplifying the emotion until it's strong enough to be processed. Without the ability to use language, since, you're asleep, it does this by distilling the emotions into one of 5 central themes: identity, desire, fear, loss, or conflict.
That is
taking the
awful.
same memory fragments as earlier and then repurposing and combining them into a structure that can express one of these themes. So the plot that comes from this isn't logical. It's not the story you'd expect from a movie script. It's emotional logic, cause and effect that's used to reinforce the core emotion, not to make literal sense. But why it chooses these specific themes, or where those themes even come from, is something we still don't know. However, some people have ventured far enough to give us some clues.
Brother, I can tell you now, dream or not, if I have stairs and I see that, if it's running at me, I'm just dying. I'm just immediately. If it's not running at me, I'm just gonna. I'm just gonna sit there. That is fucking awful. That is horrid.
Level 4 is where dreams cross a boundary. They stop feeling like they're generated from you and start feeling like they're
Not
generated
fucking cool.
for you. Experiences include characters that keep returning, real places you'll visit, and
Davidson?
encounters with independent agents. But above all else, what defines this level is the feeling that your experience isn't yours. And on Reddit, there's some really strange examples of
I just
this.
wanted to let you
One
know the
case
fridge
describes
was
the
empty.
experience of encountering the same figure night after night across more than 10 years of dreaming, first meeting as children and then growing up together. Another describes dreaming about places they've never been to or heard of, vividly picturing everything, like the colors, the architecture, or the extravagant shop names, only to then wake up and find out that that place and the way they dreamt it actually exists. In both cases, the dream unfolds from their perspective, while the person and place feel like independent agents. However, these are individual examples. It's not like this theme is that widespread, right? Nope. When I was looking through the massive dream bank database, the most interesting thing I found was this: consistent reports of being chased, sometimes by strangers and sometimes by people you know, sometimes on foot and sometimes in a vehicle. Regardless, the theme is so widespread that it consistently ranks in the top 3 most experienced nightmares, as well as being the single most frequently reoccurring one. But what's more is that it's often accompanied by an inability to escape, where the dreamer falls and then gets caught, or where their legs get so heavy that they can't move. It's not like the dreamer wants that to happen, they're actively trying to escape. And yet, in a similar manner to the Reddit examples, no matter how urgently they try, the outcome is inevitable. I believe that this is because the elements of your dreams can mean multiple things at once. But why this happens is particularly interesting to me. We know it's because, in some way, level 4 is where the brain attempts to extract meaning from the structured emotions it created earlier. But extracting meaning predominantly comes in 2 forms. There's the top layer, which is subjective and personal, determined by things like your experience, memories, and how you interpret them. And then there's the deeper layer, which is universal and instinctual, shaped by evolutionary pressures or the inherited neural templates that follow. Generally, the structuring of dreams comes from the top layer, so think things like the people, length of, or situations in your dreams. While the emotional gravity, the 5 themes from earlier, come from the deeper, shared layer. In your dream, both are present at the same time, but to do that, your brain uses something called an emergent attractor network, which, to keep it brief, are reoccurring motifs of memory that emerge from the interactions of neurons due to how they're connected. This gives them two key properties:
This is getting into
stable
something
concepts that
I
can be
don't
recalled
understand at all.
consistently, while also being flexible enough to adapt to new experiences. The adaptable part is where your control in the dream, the top layer, comes from, while the stable part stays the same, and is where the elements you can't control come from. So, for example, if you experience a nightmare about being chased, the person
The
chasing you
fuck?
might embody something from your personal life that you've had a recent conflict with, while the experience of being
Interesting,
chased
okay.
embodies the universal fear of a confrontation with inescapable consequences. In the Reddit example with the unknown person appearing again and again, this figure might reappear whenever the dreamer is caught in a reoccurring emotional cycle, but in the stable layer, it's a symbol for a part of them that they need to incorporate. And it's only when they do that the person and the emotional cycle will stop appearing. So in other words, the lack of control is what provides the consistent framework necessary to make the dream
Get it off
interpretable,
my screen.
while the flexibility of it is shaped and colored by your own experiences or whatever you're going through. Still, level 4 is where dream research basically falls off a cliff, so I'm reasoning based on the limited information I have. But what makes this even crazier is that this isn't even the deepest level. There's some dreams where you know you're dreaming, and that awareness opens up a whole new door into an entirely different experience. It's
Dude, every single time I feel like my fucking breath go, because whatever. No, it's a great point. I've never lucid dreamed. However, I have a few times consciously been made aware in my dream of the fact that I'm dreaming. And every time it's immediately just, where am I? And I'm just sitting in my bed. And the most recent time, I think it was like a week ago. I mean, I think it was like a week ago. I was in bed, obviously. And in my dream, I woke up late for work. Classic dream. I get to work, I'm talking with one of my coworkers, and it felt like, how you say, like, oh, some dreams feel real. Like, dude, if this felt like a trip, like if this dream in the dream went on for 20 years, I would have thought it was, I lived my whole life. Like, it was, like, it had the fogginess now, like, as being awake, but it felt completely real. It felt like I was tripping on fucking, like, ayahuasca or something. It was insane. And at one point, I'm talking to my coworker. We're just shooting the shit at work like we would every other day. Fucking wiping club. How is your golf game, sir? I don't see many divots. Would you like me to get rid of the evidence for you? Oh, thanks for my 2 schmeckles. Like, we're just sitting there talking, and we're doing our job. And at one point, it's like the fucking story of the guy who, like, lived a whole life after he hit his head. He was out for like 2 seconds, but he lived an entire life. And he's just staring at, like, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with that goddamn lamp over there? And he's just staring at the lamp. It just gets really big. Like, that's what it felt like. Like, at one point in the dream, I didn't catch it, snapped. And I looked at my coworker and I said, we'll call him Jeff. I'm like, Jeff, you're not real. And he went, what? And then I went, I'm dreaming. And then it was literally like, imagine a white, bright light shooting up a black tunnel. And I just went, and I woke up, and it was like 2 hours before I had to wake up to leave. Like, wake up to get ready to go to work. And I'm like, oh. It was just insane. Like, it was so visceral. And the fact that it felt so real. And the scariest part about it was, like, that was the longest I've had a dream go on. Like, it was a good 2 or 3 what felt like real life hours play out. And it just wasn't real. Like, that fucked with me for like a good few hours of that day. And I still remember that now. Like, I'm way foggier on it now. Like, when I first woke up, I could literally feel like I just had the conversations. That was fucking weird. Alright, end of yap.
Rare, and I've never experienced it before, but in the people who get to level 5, something radically different emerges. Lucid dreaming, which is when you're in a dream but are aware of the fact that you're in a dream. When things are going your way, that's great. You can randomly fly, or jump through walls, or otherwise play around with the contents of your unconscious. But when it's not, it's terrifying, as just because you're aware doesn't mean you have control. And when this happens,
that'd be
two
awful.
experiences are reported more than any others: encounters with hostile characters and getting stuck in a nesting dream. In the first one, there are many reports on both Reddit and the Dream Bank that explain what happens. The person becomes lucid, gains awareness, and tries to tell the figures in their dreams that they aren't real. In the good scenarios, nothing happens, but in the bad ones, the characters get angry, sometimes screaming things like, "You weren't supposed to know," and at others, just turning around to lunge at the dreamer. No one really knows why things like this happen. The only thing we do know about lucid dreams is that parts of your prefrontal cortex reactivate. But even that gets complicated, because in the second experience, you don't have the same level of freedom. As the reports go, a person wakes up and starts their day. They get dressed, use the bathroom, and brush their teeth. At first, everything feels normal, until they catch the reflection in the mirror. It's wrong. Their nose is on their forehead, and the mirror is a different color than it's supposed to be. As soon as they realize, bam, they wake up. Luckily, it was just a dream. So they feel a sense of relief and then get started on their morning routine again.
Oh my
but when
God,
they check the mirror this time, their face is still distorted. Only now, the mirror's color matches reality. So they panic and then bam, wake up again. This time, they get suspicious. So they go straight into the bathroom and look at the reflection in the mirror.
Fine.
Immediately, a sense of relief washes over
not
them.
awake.
They're finally actually awake. But then, when they take a second glance, their face distorts again. Suddenly, bam, they wake up. This time,
That's
for
awful.
real. In the reports of people who have experienced this cycle can happen again and again and again, sometimes 7 times in total, all while the dream gets closer to reality every single time. It's a terrifying experience to think about, honestly, because as of right now, all we have are reports. Some people think these experiences emerge from the tension of being aware and the system of the dream itself. Others think it's because your awareness can't sync with the sensory input you...
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, do you almost think, like, because the brain is so not understood, do you think, like, the creation of physical horrors is, like, different parts of your brain almost fighting itself? Like, because we could get into, like, the simulation theory, where it's, like, that you're not supposed to know that. It's like you fell asleep, you broke the simulation, you know, but, like, I would almost argue that because it's the different receptors, different areas of the brain attacking and trying to repurpose that one receptor, and it's creating things, it's faking things out. And it's almost like if you are conscious that this is a dream, then that means that the fake out isn't correct. Ooh, sorry, I just fucked with the focus. That means the fake out isn't working, and then that's not good, because then the other parts of the brain would know it's fake. That's a very that's a very I can't think of a word, but it almost makes it feel like the brain's in multiple states of consciousness, like cohabitating together, which is a whole different fucking hole I'm not going down. But like, that would be weird. Like, the psychological horrors are like your body's way of like trying to manipulate it, and then also the aspect of like how your brain makes things up in the dark. It could just be the fact that you know you're in a dream, but you can't snap yourself out of it, and you don't have any control over it. So that stress, like he said, that stress and that tension weaken your mental state, and everything becomes dark, like in negative. It's got to have something to do with it.
Get when you're awake. So the looping is done to flip through dream layers and waking signals until they match, and that's when you wake up. Regardless, this is the final level of dreams, at least based on our understanding right now. And honestly, I think it just opens more questions than it answers. But maybe, with time, we'll be able to figure them out. Anyway, thanks for watching.
Wonderful video. Fantastic. Oh, great. Fan-fucking-tastic video, dude. Holy shit.